Well, a gang conflict warrant is in place after 4 shootings in Levin.
Horowhenua's mayor is welcoming a tripling of police resource after a spate of gang shootings in Levin.
Very worrying and concerning. I don't understand the dynamics of the murky gang world, but when it spills out into the community like this has done over the past week, it is very concerning for our community.
Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies, and today on The Detail, what's really going on in Levin? Police have flooded the small North Island town after 5 gang shootings in just 1 week. It's nomads versus mongrel mob. 2 people have already been seriously injured, and there are fears members of the public will get caught in the crossfire. Police describe the shootings as brainless violence, and a gang conflict warrant has been enacted for the region with guns and knives already seized.
I think it's simmering away. People are just waiting to know what is going to happen next. It flared up really quickly, and although things can quickly settle down, it leaves people with the question of what next.
That's Alicia Rousseau, a senior reporter at the Manawatu Standard. She's been covering the shootings in Levin since day one. She's out on the beat as we talk. Now, Levin is the largest town in the Horowhenua district, which is in the Manawatu Whanganui region. Population is about 20,000, and it is the birthplace of famed actress Rebecca Gibney, rugby star Carlos Spencer, and noted journalist Pat Booth. But it is the gangs who are stealing all the headlines this year.
The first thing we realised anything was escalating was on the 18th of August when a man went into Horowhenua Healthcare on Liverpool Street and he had a gunshot wound to his thigh. And so he was taken to Palmerston North Hospital, really serious condition. After that, we then had a house that was shot at on Hinamoa Street. And now that street does have quite a history of deprivation, and it is kind of known as quite a rough area. And then shortly after that, we had 5 shots fired down a long driveway on Maple Street.
Living in this home are people with deep roots to the Nomads, a large organised criminal gang formed by former members of Black Power in the Horowhenua region. The Nomads have had a long presence in Levin.
A nearby dairy actually captured those shots on CCTV, and the staff there told me they were just petrified. The owner actually lives on site, so he was asleep at the time, and one staff member was out the front, and he pretty much dived behind the counter, unsure where these shots were coming from.
Police now have that security camera footage, and it does capture the sound of gunshots, but not who pulled the trigger or why.
The people that we've been speaking to at the dairy think that there's the usual gang members that they deal with, but they feel that there's been new people that have moved to town that they don't recognise, and that's kind of created a situation where they're feeling just really unsafe about what is actually going on. So then after that, we obviously had the second person shot at a property on Bartholomew Road. And then we've also had an incident where a second set of shots were heard on Maple Street, but that hasn't been confirmed by police. But apparently 2 shots were heard fired, and a search warrant was carried out at that property, and there were arrests made there. Then we had a shooting on Vincent Drive, and that was about 4:39 a.m. on the morning that happened. And a resident nearby told me it was so loud that it woke her up. And then within a couple of days of that, the police were searching a home just around the corner in relation to that shooting, and they had blocked off the road. So she was really concerned. She obviously has a teenage daughter who walks to and from school. And although, yes, it was early hours of the morning, I think it's the recklessness of these shots. You know, they're being fired at houses, at sheds, and they just have a bit of a concern around, is someone else going to be caught up in this?
As Alicia mentioned, 2 people have already been seriously injured in separate shooting incidents, but both of them were involved in gangs, so far no one uninvolved has been hurt. But locals worry this could change with tragic consequences.
Absolutely. I think there's always that fear, particularly when one of the shots was fired at 3 o'clock, just after 3 o'clock, where there was quite a number of school children that would be travelling that way. It was a busy route. So although it may not be intended, the recklessness of these discharges is putting other people at risk, and that is the concern for police. they also have quite a concern that these members are travelling around in the community with firearms and weapons in their vehicles. They've got a number of them. So that is a worry as well.
So the police have arrived en masse in Levin, with extra officers being brought in from nearby districts. The exact number hasn't been confirmed by police, but they are in constant contact with the gangs, either through stopping them on the streets or meeting with them, and are offering to sit down and talk with them.
Since that, things have really seemed to settle down. And I was talking to residents this morning, and they actually think, or one woman said to me, you can't go anywhere without seeing police. So they believe that the heavy police presence has managed to kind of quell things for now. But I think their main concern is, if police leave and when that happens, will this flare up again? Because we really still don't know who is actually responsible and why this is really occurring. We know that the nomads are involved, we know the mongrel mob are involved, but who their targets are and what their actual end game is, we still don't know that.
So we don't know, is it a turf war, personal disputes, drugs, money, recruitment? We don't know what has actually sparked this?
Well, that's what police are saying to us, that we don't know. But talking to residents, and this is what we've got from them, is that methamphetamine is an incredibly big issue. And I know that from all the gang things that I cover, that many of these crimes are committed by young men who are on methamphetamine. But one woman told me that it's just really cheap and easy to get at the moment. So they feel that these young men are particularly high on drugs when they're doing this. They're also wondering, and this is what a resident in Hokio told me, and she lives quite within the nomads. They've got quite a stronghold out at that little beach settlement. And she said to me, actually, it goes deeper than gangs, that these are actually whānau issues that go beyond that, and there are familial links between these gang members. And some of them are quite young, and she said very young, preteen, involved, and some of them were out to make a name for themselves. And when I put that to the area commander, he said, yes, some of them are extremely young, but they don't know what is actually motivating this at the moment.
And Alicia pointed out, while it is often gang versus rival gang, sometimes there is internal gang conflict. There was a killing recently in the area, and it's alleged this time it was nomad on nomad.
Police in Horowhenua have named the man whose death is at the centre of a homicide investigation. The body of 56-year-old Robert Natty Albert was found in a building at Muapauka Park near Lake Horowhenua last Thursday.
And shortly before that, we had a series of arsons at Hokio Beach that were also involving the nomads. So, although these shootings are flaring up now, these do happen from time to time, and these tensions have been there for a really long time.
A High Court trial won't go ahead because a murder charge has been dropped against a man accused of killing a Nomads gang member near a dam behind Shannon in Horowhenua.
One Levin resident says there is often crime and police activity on her street.
And one woman said to me, this particular issue has been simmering away. So the questions they have is, what can be done, or what has been done to try and prevent this from really blowing up the way that it has?
Now, you talked about the police presence and the increased police presence in recent weeks. Do you think they were prepared for this spate of shootings? And talk me through just how they have responded.
I'm not sure if they were prepared, but I think what's given them sort of significant powers this time is these additional legislative powers through the Gang Conflict Warrant.
The Gang Conflict Warrant is a temporary order that gives police more special powers under the Criminal Activity Intervention Legislation Act. They can search vehicles and occupants of vehicles of suspected gang members and seize firearms, weapons and vehicles. Here's Manawatu Area Commander Inspector Ross Grantham talking to RNZ about the warrant.
The fact that we have instigated the Gang Conflict Warrant is a really good indication of how worried we are. That is a strong piece of legislation, and we used it sagely. It enables our officers to operate more quickly. So with the gangs identified, with the groups identified, we can stop their vehicles and search them, looking for weapons. Normally, we'd have to go through another process to have the power of search. This warrant gives us a very wide breadth across a geographical area, where we can act very quickly.
And so I think this is a new response that we haven't seen before here, where they are coming in, they've brought in the armed offenders squad, and they are setting up road stops. They are going and they are pulling over anybody that they think has any connection to gang links or the conflict. They're pulling them over, they're searching their vehicles, they're searching the people in the vehicles. If needed, they're calling on the AOS to come and support the officers to do this. They're searching homes to do this. They've set up drink driving checkpoints along Liverpool Street, and that feeds off into the streets that have had the homes shot at. They also did the same along Queen Street East by Vincent Drive and where that scene was, and were just stopping cars. And although it was breath testing, I could see that it was sort of a tactic where they're able to at least stop several cars and be able to kind of have a presence along those streets where there was the crime escalating. And so one woman said to me on Queen Street East, by the time she reaches town, which isn't very far, she would see 3 police officers. She said there's nowhere you can go at the moment without seeing that presence. And so I think the biggest thing is that the searching, but just being present in the town, on the streets, patrolling constantly. I don't think really the gang members can move freely like they were without seeing an officer.
And I understand several arrests have been made, but those responsible for the actual shootings are still at large. Is that correct? What's the latest there?
That is correct. There's been 7 arrests, but they largely relate to police pulling over people and finding firearms in the vehicles or knives. So these aren't people that have actually done the shootings. And so that is concerning, but there is a really strong no-narking culture within gangs, and that's still incredibly prevalent. So, for example, the man who was shot and released from hospital, it's not likely that he's going to get out and tell police who did it. So I think police have a really hard job trying to get through a culture of that as well, where people just don't want to talk to them or be seen to giving them information about who is actually behind this. And the families that I know are involved are very much entrenched and have been for generations. It started with their uncles and their grandfathers, and it's just moved down. So those are the people that are kind of involved in this.
It's a cycle, but do you know how long have police indicated at all how long they'll be in town for?
No, they've just said to us that the Gang Conflict Warrant is ongoing. It's now been extended to cover Palmerston North. So it already covered Shannon, Otaki, Foxton and Levin, and they are all areas where there is gangs. I myself grew up in Shannon, and that was the home of Mossy Hines and the Nomads and all that kind of thing. So that's been really an issue for many decades, but they've now extended it to Palmerston North, and I don't think that's surprising. I cover a lot of gang stuff up here. I'm covering a trial at the moment with 2 nomads accused of murdering a meth dealer. I've just covered another trial of 2 black powers that murdered a mongrel mob member here. So these are the kinds of issues that for some reason the Manawatu and Horowhenua area are having to deal with, every year, sometimes multiple times a year.
You've also got the government saying they're doing a gang crackdown.
Gang patches will be banned in public and police will be given extra powers to stop gang members congregating.
New Zealand's government's cracking down hard on criminal gangs.
Gang members who hide their assets by giving them to family and friends are being told their time is up.
I mean, is this working out or failing in your area?
Well, I'd have to wonder, because I don't think the patch prohibition is working in that sense, in my perspective. It may be too early to say that, but it does feel like there's not enough being done in terms of prevention. And I also wonder for Levin, there's not a lot of options for young men down there, and so I think there needs to be a lot more than just a police response. I think there really needs to be some sort of societal shift or change where we lay the foundations and we give these young men a different pathway other than just the gang life.
So you talk about the Nomads and the mongrel mobs. So what are the other major gangs in your area?
So we've got quite a big presence here. We've got Black Power, we've got the Evil Souls, we've got the Headhunters, we've got Hell's Angels. So we do have a number of gangs. We've got different types of chapters of the mongrel mob here, and we did have the cartel trying to set up here. They were staying in a hotel room and being surveilled by police, actually, but they were trying to establish themselves here. A contact that I have in Danny Verk, who was part of the mob, he told me that the Comancheros are trying to move into the region as well. So we do have a number of gangs in this area, but I don't personally know what it is that attracts people to here.
Because that was my question. What on earth? Why Levin?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I guess, someone did say to me before this, if you went out, you might see one police officer. Same as in Shannon and Foxton and Otaki. They are towns that don't have a huge number of those types of resources. So I think it is a little bit easier maybe to be able to move about those cities or towns and do the things that those people are doing and be unnoticed doing it.
Do you think, Alicia, and you've been local, that Levin is unfairly labelled as a gang town because of this, or is that on the money?
I think it is a little bit unfair. I wouldn't say it's a gang town, but I think it definitely has had a presence of gangs for a long time. But there's also some really good people there, hardworking people there that do really care about their community and that do want to make change and want to see things differently. And there's been a lot of work that has happened in the community, such as Hinamoa Street. There's new housing built there to try and help families because Levin has mid to high levels of deprivation. And so I think really it's not so much that it's a gang town, but there are pockets of that community that are part of that world.
Do you worry, or do police worry, that there are out-of-town gang members coming into town to back up the locals and they'll just bide their time until police go, then it'll be all on again?
I'm really not sure about that, but I do know that that recent trial I mentioned with the two Black Powers that murdered the mongrel mob member here, one of them had come from out of town, the Black Power guy, and he didn't even know the other guy that they did the shooting with. So there is a call to arms that goes out, and Jared Gilbert spoke to me about this and the trial, and he said when an affront happens to a member of a gang, there will be a call to arms, and there will be people that will respond from out of town depending on what has happened to that person. And then that depends on the level of violence or retaliation that follows that. But I do believe, yes, there would be people that travel from out of town to support them, or people that are involved may have potentially travelled away from town now.
What about the people of Levin? How are locals coping? Are they too scared to go out? What's the feel in town?
Levin has sort of two sides to it. There's the community side that they know this lifestyle, they've been exposed to it, they've grown up around it, they know these guys, they've been to school with them, so they're sort of concerned, but they're not scared. But then there's this other side where we've got quite a few elderly people who are scared, who are anxious, and who are worried about what's going to happen when the police leave. But we also have a section of that community who, because they are elderly, they've been around for a while, and they're particularly fed up with it. And they do want something done. And they don't, they're sick of hearing about it, and they really want police to take action. I mean, you get the old saying from a lot of people, lock them up, don't let them out. And we know that that's not as easy as it sounds, but that's the sentiment from some of the people down there who have just had enough.
For a small centre of about 20,000 people, Levin's featured in its fair share of news headlines this year. There was the boy racer invasion and the recent gang-related shootings.
That was RNZ reporter Jimmy Allingham, who visited Levin last week to talk to locals about what's been going on.
80-year-old Bonnie Crichton's been out busking on her keyboard.
It's comfortable. Everything's here that I want. Hairdressers, grocery shops, you name it, it's all here.
But recently she stayed away from her usual spot.
The shootings lately have put me off coming out down to town because sometimes you could just be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
So you've been staying home?
Yeah, I have.
My colleague was woken at some ungodly hour last week by gunshots. It's very unpleasant, very unsettling for people. But no, day by day it doesn't affect us. And we were all, saw the skid marks on the intersections, and so we're aware these things happen.
Local Mayor Bernie Wandin also spoke to Herald Now about his concerns for the town.
It is very concerning for our community, and they want it stopped, obviously, and these people to go away, because most of them, I think, are from out of town anyway. I think they're trying to have some power struggles within the gangs, and they don't like what's going on, so they're using these methods to try and send a message to their own people. And unfortunately, it's now resulted in these number of firearm incidents, which is obviously, really concerning for our community.
He's happy with the current police presence, but does fear what will happen when they leave.
They've already discovered a number of firearms, knives and weapons within those vehicles, so that does make a difference. But I think what's probably happening is that everyone's going to ground and waiting till that finishes. But hopefully, police have been very positive and reactive to what is going on, and hopefully that will continue.
People in Levin are really putting their faith in the police to deal with this. And I think they are just waiting and seeing and holding their breath to see what happens next.
During the making of this podcast, a gang conflict warrant was put in place in Hawke's Bay in response to gang violence there. Police say 10 people have been arrested, at least 4 of them are from the mongrel mob gang, and 16 search warrants have been executed. That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. Thank you to Alicia Russo. This episode was produced by Gwen McClure and engineered by Jeremy Ansell. I'm Amanda Gillies. Mā te wā.